I forget the principle, but somebody told me back in the day there's like an idea among scammers that if you're going to make a scam, make it as outrageous and stupid and silly as you can and just be upfront and acknowledge the ridiculousness of it. And like the people who are even moderately skeptical won't fall for it, but they never were going to. But the people who are gullible will every time. And like when I worked at the bank, there was an old guy. This is kind of sad. So when I was working at US Bank, we would do all of these trainings, right, on how to prevent or at least discourage fraud and scamming. So we would usually be trained to look out for people asking to like have cashier's checks or cashier checks made up with very vague explanations. Because on a cashier check, you actually write on the memo line what it's for. So if you're buying a car cash, it'll say, 2002 Volvo station wagon. Boom, it's on the check. It's understood. And it shows up in bank records that way. But what we would have happen is these older people, every single time it was usually older people, or like one time it was this really unstable, crazy guy that would come in and start rambling about his former career as a NASCAR driver and as a professional golfer. And he was also an actor that worked with Tom Cruise. Like he would just go on totally delusional. Like he's almost homeless and he thinks that he's lived this like 15 lives. And what we came to find out is that guy that was crazy, turns out like he was saying entire paragraphs that he had just memorized from movies, but he would regurgitate it word for word as though it was his life. It was insane. Like it was honestly kind of scary. And we only caught it because the guy I was working with, Ryan, like heard him start to tell this story about it was like I think the race car thing. And he's like, I've heard that before, and I forget the movie, but it was from some movie, and the guy had memorized it and was like pretending that that was him. It was really weird. But we would have these old guys come into the bank and old ladies, and they would ask for a cashier's check, and they would ask for it to be like written out to like Prince of Serbia LLC or something, like the most ridiculous thing you can imagine. And they would do this regularly, and we could say, hey, I'm just not comfortable for this. One way we would get around it is like this one old guy who he got scammed like every month almost on the nose. He would come in and he'd say, I found an investment opportunity. And we'd be like, okay, Mr. whatever his name was, what's this investment opportunity? And he would like start explaining what it was. And it was always like, well, this guy, he's currently got a ton of money offshore. He needs to get the money back into the United States, but there's a transfer fee. But he needs the transfer fee in USD since all of his money is in like the peso. So what I need to do is I need to wire him $5,000 US, and then he can use that money to then transfer over the pesos, convert them into dollars, and then in exchange for my $5,000, he's going to pay me back $500,000. It's a fantastic opportunity. And like it doesn't take a genius to be like that. Sorry, dude, that's not real. It's not real. But this guy who's like 80 years old has a big pension. He had like a few $100,000 in his checking account, like that he was just living off of. He would just do this regularly. He would come in and he would get these things set up. And so how we normally would deal with it is like we couldn't outright just say, no, we're not going to allow you to take out your money or to send your money where you want to do it, where you want to send it. What we could do is like 5,000, I would be like, oh, that's above my daily transfer limit. So I just have to get managerial approval. And then my manager would just go on lunch at that same time. And then he would leave. And usually within a day or two, he would forget about it because he was kind of old and senile. And then he wouldn't get scammed. But like that's what we had to do to protect the customer in this like roundabout way, to keep an eye out for his best interest from what was clearly a scam. But we kind of had to do it in a slightly dishonest way. But it was because we didn't want the dude to just keep losing all of his money to scammers. So it was like one of those ethical question mark areas where like you want to help, but you also don't want to enable that weird stuff. Like it was just, but stuff like that happened all the time. But yeah, all told, that old guy, I feel bad for him, but hopefully they ended up shutting down that branch that I worked at. So hopefully he just ended up being like, the bank's too far away, I won't bother, and just ended up living happily ever after. But I felt bad for the guy because there was always older people that got some email and they just bought into it, thought it was an amazing opportunity, and ended up losing a ton of money. So hopefully he's okay.